The CO2 scrubber indicator on Mallory's backup cartridge reads 98.6% used, which means it needs replacement before we go outside. I log it on my slate and move to the next suit hanging in the prep alcove. Every morning starts this way, methodical checks of the equipment that keeps us breathing in vacuum. Commander Parks signs off on mission objectives. I sign off on the hardware that makes those objectives survivable. We've been on the moon for 3 weeks. The temporary base sits 300 meters from the site, close enough to minimize rover transit, far enough that if something collapses, we don't lose everything at once. Our setup is lean. 4 habitat modules linked by flexible tunnels, a workshop for tool maintenance, a medical unit that doubles as our galley, and the communications array with its relay mast extending 25 meters above the regolith to maintain line of sight with the orbital relay. The extra height clears the basin rim's local horizon. Everything is anchored with regolith screws and deadman anchors to ride out extreme thermal expansion cycles in vacuum, electrostatic dust lofting, and the occasional tremor from deep fault settling. I'm Grant Galloway, extravehicular systems engineer, which means I maintain the suits and write the protocols for working outside. Also the expedition's incident officer, which is the job nobody wants until something goes wrong. Then everyone wants you to have done it perfectly. Ben Hollis floats into the prep area. Not actually floating, just moving with the shuffle people develop after a few weeks in low gravity. 1/6 Earth weight means you learn to push off lightly and brake early. Ben's our field geologist, built like someone who spent his 20s hauling core samples up mountains, though up here that muscle mass just costs him extra calories. Mallory's backup filter, he asks. Already noted. I'll swap it after the briefing. Parks is asking for you. I finish annotating the checklist and follow Ben through the tunnel to the command module. The morning briefing happens in the same cramped space where we eat, sleep, and argue about whose turn it is to clean the carbon dioxide scrubbers. Commander Julian Parks sits at the fold-down table with Dr. Lena Caldwell, our medical officer and secondary science lead. They're reviewing something on Parks's slate. "Grant," Parks says without looking up, "today's EVA assignments." I wait. Parks has a habit of announcing decisions like they're still open for discussion, which they never are. "You'll lead tool tests on the nearest structure. Mallory handles site mapping with the backpack imager. Ben deploys the remaining sensor beacons in a grid pattern extending. He glances at his slate, 50 meters past the current perimeter. That puts Ben in uncharted ground, I say. We need the data. Then he needs a tether partner within visual range. Caldwell taps her slate. Alec can shadow him with the rover, maintains safety margins and gives us a mobile extraction point. Alec Shaw is our pilot and rover operator, former cargo hauler who flew supply runs to Mars orbit until budget cuts killed his contract. He transferred to lunar operations because it paid better than unemployment. Good driver. Doesn't talk much. Right now he's in the adjacent module running diagnostics on our primary rover, which we've named the Crawler, because it tops out at 12 kilometers per hour and handles like a cargo container welded to a set of wheels. "Fine," I say. "What tools am I cleared to use?" Parks slides his slate toward me. The approved equipment list includes a diamond wire saw, a set of coring bits, impact hammers, and the thermal spike, a resistive heating element designed for softening regolith when you need to extract something frozen into the ground. "No explosives," Parks adds, which is his way of reminding me that last week I suggested we could learn a lot by blowing a test panel off one of the structures. "Wouldn't dream of it," I say. Orbital surveys 3 months ago picked up thermal anomalies in this region. Blocks of material radiating at temperatures consistently cooler than the surrounding regolith, despite identical solar exposure. That shouldn't happen. Lunar surface temperature swings from 120 Celsius in direct sun to minus 170 in shadow, and nothing maintains a thermal differential without active cooling or unusual material properties. When the imaging satellites refined their scans, they found shapes. Rectangular forms arranged in rows like streets. Proportions that matched human architecture, walls 2 to 4 meters tall, spaces between them wide enough to suggest corridors or alleys. The scientific community spent 6 weeks arguing about whether this constituted evidence of prior visitation or just pareidolia at high resolution. Then someone pointed out we had the budget and the launch window to go find out. We found streets, we found walls, we found corners and right angles and steps that fit a boot. What we haven't found are doors, windows, entrances, or any indication these things were meant to be entered. They're sealed blocks, like someone built solid houses with no rooms inside. Caldwell leans forward. Grant, when you cut today, I want real-time video feed from your helmet cam. We're still trying to determine if the internal structures you exposed last time are load-bearing or something else. Something else is Caldwell's phrase for, we have no idea what we're looking at. Last week I made the first test cut, shallow, just 10 centimeters deep, using the diamond wire to avoid percussion that might trigger collapse. The saw bit through the outer surface cleanly, revealing dense material underneath. Not solid, though. There were ribs, channels, and a network of glossy black passages that looked more like the interior of a bone than a building. I expected hollow spaces, evidence of construction methods. Instead, I found something that grew. I'll keep the feed live, I tell Caldwell. But if it reacts badly, I'm pulling back. Agreed. Parks dismisses us. I return to the prep alcove and swap Mallory's filter, then run my own suit check. The process takes 20 minutes and touches every seal, joint, and backup system. People die in vacuum because they skip steps. I don't skip steps anymore. Mallory arrives while I'm testing my helmet's pressure sensors. Dr. Mallory Pike, geochemist, transferred from a comet sample mission that got scrubbed due to orbital mechanics. She's precise to the point of superstition. Checks her tether clips 3 times, verifies her beacon twice, always enters the airlock left foot first. I recognize the pattern. She's managing fear by controlling what she can. Filters replaced, I tell her. You're green across the board. Thanks. She pulls her suit from its rack and begins the pre-EVA ritual, each movement practiced until it's automatic. You think we'll find anything different today? I think we'll confirm what we already know. These things are solid, dense, and they don't want to be cut. Buildings don't want anything. Then we need a better word than buildings. The 4 of us suit up. Me, Mallory, Ben, and Alec. Parks and Caldwell stay inside to monitor telemetry and communications. Suiting takes 40 minutes if you don't rush it. The modern EVA suit is a compromise between mobility and protection. Multi-layer fabric to handle thermal extremes, a hard upper torso shell for the life support backpack, and joints designed to bend without binding even when pressurized. The gloves are the weak point. You need dexterity to operate tools, but thin gloves mean less insulation and faster thermal transfer. I wear the heavy-duty models and accept that my hands will ache by the end of every EVA. We cycle through the airlock 2 at a time. Mallory and me first, then Ben and Alec. The outer hatch opens onto the moon. No atmosphere means no gradual transition. One moment, you're in a pressurized environment with warm air and sound. The next, you're standing on a surface that hasn't felt wind or rain in 4 billion years, where the only sounds are your own breathing and the occasional creak of your suit's joints as thermal expansion fights against composite materials. The sun hangs low on the horizon. We time our EVAs for local morning when temperatures are manageable and shadows haven't shortened into hard contrasts yet. The structures rise 300 meters away across flat regolith. From here they look like a neighborhood someone abandoned mid-construction, blocks arranged in parallel rows with clear spacing between them. No rubble, no collapse, no atmospheric weathering. Space weathering from micrometeoroids and solar wind exists but acts over geologic timescales, because weathering requires atmosphere and time, and the moon offers unlimited time, but nothing to weather with. Alec brings the crawler around while I load the tool sled. The sled is a frame with skids instead of wheels, designed to slide across regolith without digging in. I pack the diamond wire saw, the thermal spike, spare power cells, and anchoring pitons. Mallory checks her backpack imager, a ground-penetrating radar unit that maps subsurface density and confirms link to the base. "Comms check," Parks's voice says in my helmet. "Grant, Mallory, Ben, Alec, respond in order. Grant, green. Mallory, green. Ben, green. Alec, green. You have 4 hours of optimal light. Stay within relay range. Grant has incident command for field decisions, meaning if something goes wrong out here, I make the call whether we abort or push through. It's supposed to be reassuring that someone with field experience holds authority when Parks is 3 minutes away on foot. Mostly it just means if someone dies, it's my name on the report. We approach the site in a line, me pulling the tool sled, Mallory walking a parallel course 20 meters to my left, Ben angling toward the far side to begin his beacon deployment. Alec follows in the crawler, slow enough that we won't outpace him even with our careful low-gravity shuffle. The nearest structure stands 4 meters tall, maybe 6 meters long, and 3 wide, perfectly rectangular. The surface is smooth, but not polished, more like cast metal that's been abraded by something extremely fine. The color shifts depending on sun angle, dark grey in shadow, almost silver where light strikes directly. I've seen similar effects in titanium alloys and certain ceramics. I circle the block, looking for changes since our last visit. The proportions still disturb me. There's a ledge running along the base at ankle height, exactly where you'd place your boot if you wanted to step up. Higher up, another ledge at waist height, perfect for bracing yourself while working. Near the top, a recessed line that could be decorative or structural, positioned right where someone would naturally reach if they were climbing. These are human dimensions. Human ergonomics. Human scale translated into architecture that predates human presence on the moon by, well, that's what we're here to figure out. I set down the tool sled and unpack the pitons. Mallory's voice comes through my helmet speaker. I'm getting anomalous density readings on the western row. Subsurface voids, maybe. "Mark it for tomorrow's survey," I say. "I need you on visual watch while I'm cutting." Confirmed. I hammer the first piton into the structure's base. It sinks 4 centimeters before resistance stops it. Good enough. I place 3 more, creating anchor points for the saw's stabilizing frame. The sled needs to stay rigid during cutting, or the blade will bind and snap. Alec parks the crawler 12 meters back, angled so his cameras capture my work area. Ben's moved off toward the perimeter, dropping beacons every 10 meters. Each beacon is a sensor package, seismometer, thermal monitor, and radio transponder for triangulating our positions. I mount the saw to the sled and check the blade tension. The diamond wire is a loop 2 meters in circumference, tensioned around 2 pulleys. When activated, the wire spins at high speed, not cutting so much as abrading through material with embedded industrial diamond particles. "Beginning test cut," I announce. "Target depth, 15 centimeters." I power up the saw. There's no sound except the vibration transmitted through my gloves where I grip the sled's frame. The blade contacts the wall and begins its work. The surface yields smoothly. Material comes away as fine powder that settles in straight lines down the wall face. No breeze to scatter it. I maintain steady pressure, letting the blade do the work. At 8 centimeters depth, the resistance changes. I'm hitting something denser. "Encountering secondary material," I report. Through the kerf, the cut channel, I can see what I'm exposing. Not hollow space, not uniform material either. There are structures inside, ribs running vertically like load-bearing columns, and between them channels filled with something glossy and black. The channels are roughly 5 centimeters wide, running parallel to each other in a pattern that suggests deliberate organization. I push the cut to 15 centimeters as planned, then power down. The vibration stops. I lean closer, trying to understand what I'm looking at through my helmet's visor. The black material in the channels has a surface like polished obsidian, but it's not stone. It's too uniform, too perfect. I pull a sample probe from my tool belt and carefully insert it into one of the channels. The probe slides in 2 centimeters and stops against something with different density. I extract it. A thin film of the black material clings to the probe's tip. Viscous, gel-like, not liquid enough to flow freely. Sample collected, I say, returning to base for analysis. Negative, Parks says. We need structural imaging first. Caldwell wants to know if those ribs are continuous. I'm about to argue when I notice something. The pitons, the ones I hammered into the base to anchor the sled. The surface around them looks different, less smooth. I kneel, awkward in a pressurized suit, and examine the nearest piton. The dent from the hammer is shallower than it should be. I hammered that piton 4 centimeters deep. Now it's 3 centimeters deep, maybe 2.5. Mallory, I say, come look at this. She shuffle walks over, moving with the short steps that keep your center of mass low in reduced gravity. I point at the piton. I drove this 4 centimeters deep. You watched me do it. She crouches beside me. And it's not 4 centimeters anymore. She's silent for a moment. Maybe you misjudged the initial depth. I don't misjudge measurements. Then the piton slipped out. Pitons don't slip out. They bite in. I grip the piton and try to twist it. Solid. Not even a hint of movement. The walls changed around it. Mallory stands. That's not possible. I know. I spend another 20 minutes imaging the cut with Mallory's backpack radar, capturing subsurface density profiles that will take Caldwell hours to interpret. Ben finishes his beacon deployment and returns to help pack the equipment. Alec idles the crawler, waiting. We drive back to base. I don't mention the pitons again. Mentioning something nobody can explain just starts arguments about instrument calibration and observational error. Better to document it and let the data speak. The sun has climbed higher by the time we cycle through the airlock. Inside the base, we strip out of our suits and run post-EVA checks, examining seals for wear, downloading suit computer logs, noting any anomalies. My left glove's index finger joint is slightly abraded from dust. I mark it for replacement before the next EVA. Parks convenes the debrief in the command module. We crowd around the table, 6 people in a space designed for 4, and review the day's findings on the main display. Caldwell brings up the helmet camera footage from my cut, slowing it down frame by frame. These internal channels, she says. They're not random. Look at the spacing. She's right. The channels run parallel at consistent intervals, 10 centimeters apart, regular as plumbing. The ribs between them are roughly the same width as the channels themselves, creating a 1-to-1 pattern of solid and void. Could be cooling channels, Ben suggests. Some way to manage thermal stress. Cooling requires fluid flow, Caldwell says, and we're in vacuum, unless that black gel is circulating somehow. It's not circulating, I say. It's too viscous, more like grease than coolant. Parks pulls up thermal imaging from the site. The structures still read cooler than surrounding regolith, 3 to 5 degrees Celsius difference despite identical sun exposure. Whatever they're made of, it has unusual thermal properties. We'll need material samples for spectroscopy. I have a probe sample, I say. Small amount of the gel. Good. We'll analyze it overnight. Caldwell makes notes on her slate. Grant, tomorrow I want you to extend the cut deeper, 25 centimeters minimum. I need to see where those ribs terminate. I nod. What about the pitons? Parks frowns. What about them? The anchor points. The dents weren't as deep when we packed up as when I drove them in. You measured them? No. I observed them. Then you can't be certain. I'm certain. The table goes quiet. Parks doesn't like certainty that can't be quantified. Caldwell looks interested. Ben watches me with an expression I can't read. I'll review the footage, Caldwell says. If there's evidence of material displacement, we need to understand the mechanism. The meeting breaks up. I retreat to my bunk, a shelf with a sleeping bag and privacy curtain in the Habitat module, and pull up my personal logs. 3 years ago, I was at Mars Orbital, supervising an external repair crew. Alex Tran was checking power relays on the station's spine when he decided to bypass the checklist I'd written. Thought he could save time. The splice he made had a voltage differential he didn't test for. The current stopped his heart through his suit's electronics. I filed the report exactly as it happened. Tran's family sued everyone involved. They lost, but it took 2 years of litigation. Tran's widow still sends me messages on the accident anniversary. Always the same question. Do you sleep well? I sleep fine. The nightmares only come when I'm awake. I don't know why I'm thinking about Tran now. Maybe because Parks questioned my observation. Maybe because I spent 6 hours today cutting into something I don't understand, and the rules I know don't seem to apply here. I pull up the exterior camera feeds from today's EVA, footage from the base's monitoring system, not the helmet cams. I want a wide shot, something that shows the whole site. I find the timestamp when I was making the cut and let it play. There's me, crouched by the nearest structure with the saw running. There's Mallory 20 meters off, running her imaging sweep. There's Ben in the background, a small figure moving between beacon positions. And there's a structure behind Ben that shouldn't be there. I stop the feed, go back. Check the timestamp against our Traverse logs. We left the base at 0630 local time. This footage is from 0715. I pull up the orbital survey we used to plan our site approach. The imagery taken 3 weeks ago before we landed. I count the structures. 19 in the main cluster. I count them in today's footage. 20. I run the count again. 20. One of the structures in the background, a block identical to all the others in size and proportion, doesn't appear in the orbital survey. It wasn't there 3 weeks ago. It's there now. The city has grown a new piece, and we didn't notice because lunar landscape offers no reference points, no change in vegetation or erosion or anything except the sun angle shifting. Without atmosphere to diffuse light, without weather to alter surfaces, the moon looks exactly the same from one day to the next. Unless something is building while you watch. I stare at the screen. My hands are steady on the slate's edge. My breathing is controlled. But there's a sensation I recognize from Mars Orbital, from the moment I realized Tran's suit telemetry had flatlined, the feeling of standing on ground that's about to give way. I save the comparison images and flag them for tomorrow's briefing. Then I close the file and sit in the dark, thinking about pitons that should be deeper than they are, and structures that appear overnight, and something out there on the plateau that measures what we touch. Human scale as invitation or trap. Morning briefing lasts 8 minutes. I show Parks and Caldwell the comparison images. Orbital survey versus yesterday's exterior footage. The new structure in the background, the one that wasn't there 3 weeks ago. Parks studies the screen. Could be imaging artifact, different sun angle. Same registered coordinates relative to fixed landmarks. Same dimensions as the existing blocks. It's real. Caldwell zooms in on the new structure. If it appeared between orbital survey and yesterday, we should check if there are others. Already did. Just the one. I don't mention the pitons. One thing per briefing. Parks makes a note on his slate. We'll document it during today's EVA. Grant, you and Ben will extend yesterday's cut to 25 centimeters. Mallory finishes her mapping sweep of the western row. Alec on rover standby. I pull up the site map on my slate. Mallory's traverse takes her past the new structure. I want her tethered to visual range. She's been running independent surveys for 2 weeks. That was before structures started appearing. Parks sets down his slate. You're suggesting these things are growing in response to our presence. I'm suggesting we don't know what we're dealing with. And spacing people farther apart doesn't improve our odds if something goes wrong. Caldwell taps the screen. Compromise. Mallory stays within 50 meters of the rover. Alec shadows her route. That gives us mobile extraction and maintains her survey efficiency. Parks nods. Acceptable. Grant has incident command for field decisions. We suit up. The prep routine is identical to yesterday. Check seals, verify oxygen, test radio, load tools. Mallory moves through her equipment check with the same 3-clip verification ritual. I watch her fingers on the tether carabiners, the way she tests each one individually, even though they're rated for loads that would rip the suit before the clip failed. "You're good," I tell her. She looks at me through her helmet visor. "Just being thorough." We cycle through the airlock and cross to the site. The sun sits higher than yesterday. We're starting 90 minutes later to give Caldwell time to analyze the gel sample I collected. She found nothing conclusive. The material has metallic properties but doesn't match any known alloy. High viscosity at room temperature, extremely low vapor pressure, no detectable toxicity. When she tried heating it, the gel maintained cohesion until 400 Celsius, then sublimated without transitioning through a liquid phase. Alec brings the crawler around while I unload the tool sled. Ben helps me position the saw frame over yesterday's cut. The kerf is exactly as we left it, 15 centimeters deep, clean edges, the internal ribs and channels visible in the gap. Mallory checks her backpack imager. I'm moving to the western row, starting at marker 12. "Confirmed," I say. "Alec, stay within 20 meters. Alec acknowledges with a double click on the radio. His usual response when words aren't necessary. The crawler follows Mallory across the regolith, moving at walking pace. I secure the tool sled with fresh pitons, hammering them into the structure's base. This time I measure the depth with a gauge before stepping back. 4.2 centimeters on the first piton, 4.1 on the second. I photograph each one with my helmet camera and note the timestamps. Ben stands watch while I mount the saw blade. "You really think something's changing these?" "I think we should measure everything twice." The saw spins up. I guide it into yesterday's cut, letting the blade find its rhythm against the material. The surface yields as before, diamond abrasive chewing through in steady increments. At 15 centimeters, I hit the same resistance change, the transition from outer surface to internal structure. I push deeper, 18 centimeters, 20. The blade vibrates differently now, cutting through the ribs between channels. Black gel wells up in the kerf as I breach each channel, thick and slow-moving. 23 centimeters. "Grant." Mallory's voice in my helmet, confused rather than alarmed. I'm getting strange topology here. I keep the saw running. Define strange. There's a structure directly in my path. It's not on my map. Ben moves to higher ground, 2 meters up on a rock outcrop, scanning the western row with his visor's distance markers. I see her. She's on flat ground. No structures within 20 meters. "Mallory, confirm your position," I say. A pause. "My beacon says I'm at marker 15, but I'm looking at a wall right in front of me. Same proportions as the others. I must have miscounted markers." "Alec?" I say. "I see her." Alec's voice comes back. "She's on open regolith. Nothing between her and marker 18. My hands stop moving. I power down the saw and turn toward Mallory's position. She's a small figure, 300 meters away, standing still. The crawler sits 12 meters behind her. "Mallory, walk backward 5 steps. "Why?" "Just do it." She shuffles back. I track her position through my visor's rangefinder. She's moving across flat ground. No obstacles. Then her beacon jumps. The telemetry display in my helmet shows her position shifting 40 meters in an instant. A physically impossible movement. Her beacon now places her inside the structure cluster, overlapping with a block that shouldn't contain empty space. "Mallory, report!" Her voice returns, slurred like someone waking from sedation. Where? "Caldwell," I say, switching to the base channel. "I need Mallory's full telemetry, now." Caldwell's response is immediate. "Suit pressure nominal, heart rate 140, temperature fluctuating, 36 Celsius internal, dropping." Her position beacon is inside a structure. I'm already moving, pulling the saw free and gesturing to Ben. Mark our route back to the rover. I'm going to her. Ben doesn't argue. He starts dropping marker flags every 10 meters, reflective tabs that will guide us even if visibility fails. I cover the distance at maximum safe speed for lunar gravity, each step a careful push and glide that keeps my center of mass low. Too much upward velocity, and I'll waste seconds arcing through nothing. Alec drives the crawler parallel to my course. The structure that holds Mallory's beacon looks identical to the others. 4 meters tall, 6 long, 3 wide, but it's positioned where open ground should be. I saw that patch of regolith yesterday on the exterior cameras. Nothing was there. Dust still falls down the structure's faces in slow parabolic arcs, settling in new patterns on surfaces that should have collected weeks of undisturbed regolith layers. And there, boot prints leading directly to the wall. Mallory's tread pattern, distinct from standard EVA boots. The prints march across flat ground and terminate at the structure's base, as if she walked into solid material and vanished. "Mallory," I say. "Can you hear me?" There was a wall. I turned around and it was behind me. "Where are you now?" "It's dark. My suit lights are on, but I can't see walls, just pressure. Something pressing against the chest of my suit." I examine the structure's face where her beacon pings strongest. The surface isn't perfectly smooth anymore. There's a faint rectangular depression at chest height, roughly the dimensions of her backpack imager, exactly where it would press if she'd backed against something solid. "Caldwell," I say. "What's her oxygen level?" 78%. She's breathing fast. I unload the thermal spike from the tool sled Alex brought alongside. Ben arrives and helps me position the spike mount while I drive anchoring pitons into the ground. Not into the structure this time. I don't trust it not to change around them. The thermal spike is a tungsten rod housed in a ceramic sleeve, designed to concentrate resistive heating into a narrow point. When you need to extract a frozen sample, you drive heat into the ice until it softens enough to chip free. The power draw is massive. It runs off the sled's auxiliary pack and would drain it in 40 minutes at maximum output. I place the spike against the wall where Mallory's beacon reads closest to the surface. Starting thermal breach, stand clear. The spike activates. No sound, just the vibration in my gloves as current flows through the tungsten. The wall in front of me doesn't change color. With no air, there's no convection. Heat spreads only by conduction into the wall and by radiation into space. I'm heating a 0.2 centimeters in diameter, driving temperature up until molecular bonds weaken. 30 seconds. 1 minute. The surface under the spike begins to show stress, a hairline crack propagating outward from the contact point. 2 minutes. The crack widens. White frost forms along the edges, a thin rime that appears and vanishes as trapped volatiles flash to vapor and sublimate. The crack opens. Thick black gel oozes from the gap, moving like cold honey. It spreads down the crack's length and begins flowing along the surface, following the slight downward slope toward the regolith. But then it changes direction. The gel pools at the base and begins creeping along the ground toward the spike's power cable where it touches the surface. I watch it advance, centimeter by centimeter, following the warmest path. "Ben, move that cable." He pulls it clear. The gel stops advancing and pools in place, a glossy black puddle that doesn't evaporate. I push the spike deeper into the crack, widening the breach. The material resists differently now, elastic, yielding under pressure and trying to close again when I reduce force. At 5 centimeters depth, the spike hits something that stops it completely. I can't push farther without risking the spike housing. "Mallory's oxygen is at 70%, Caldwell says. 4 hours, maybe 5 if her respiration calms. I withdraw the spike and try a pry bar, working it into the crack and applying leverage. The gap widens to 8 centimeters. I can see inside now, bands of material and channels similar to what yesterday's cut revealed. The channels run vertically here, packed with more black gel. The wall is solid. No cavity. No room where Mallory could be standing. Caldwell, her beacon. Could it be giving false position? Negative. The signal strength indicates she's within 3 meters of the surface, maximum. I try the radio again. Mallory, can you move? Try pushing against whatever's holding you. Her voice comes back weak. My legs won't move. There's something around them. It's warm. Warm. In vacuum, that means heat transfer through direct contact. I redouble the thermal attack, moving the spike up and down along the crack to widen it. The material yields reluctantly. At 12 centimeters width, I can fit my arm inside. The sun has climbed higher. Surface temperature is rising, which means the structure's baseline temperature is also rising. The cut I'm making starts sealing. I watch it happen in real time. The crack edges flowing back together like gel closing over a puncture wound. It's healing itself, I say. Ben leans over my shoulder. How is that possible? I don't know. I switch tactics. If heat softens it temporarily but doesn't create permanent openings, maybe cold will lock it in place. I pull coolant bladders from the equipment cache, chemical packs designed to keep samples frozen during transport. Crack them, and they drop to -100 Celsius within seconds. I pack the crack with coolant bladders, watching frost form along the entire length of the breach. The material stops flowing, the edges lock in position. Caldwell, oxygen. 65%. Her heart rate is stabilizing, 110. I work the pry bar into the frozen crack and apply full leverage. Something inside gives, compressing. The gap widens to 20 centimeters. I pull out the coolant packs before they damage the material, then drive the thermal spike deep into the exposed interior. The structure shudders. I feel it through my boots, a vibration transmitted through the regolith, subsonic, but strong enough to register on my suit's accelerometers. Grunt, Ben says. The ground just moved. I felt it. I keep driving the spike deeper, pushing through bands of material that compress and resist, then suddenly yield. At 30 centimeters depth, the spike breaks through into different density, less solid. I work it side to side, opening a cavity. The wall responds by sealing faster. The crack edges flow together above the spike, trapping it in place. Thermal overload, my suit warns. The spike has been running at maximum for 15 minutes. Battery at 40%. I'm losing the breach. The material is hardening faster than I can cut through it, and I'm out of time. Parks, I say, I need authorization to fall back and reassess. His response takes 3 seconds. Granted. Secure your equipment and return to base. We'll bring heavier tools. I look at Ben. He nods. Neither of us says what we're both thinking, that heavier tools might just teach this thing how to resist them better. I extract what I can. The pry bar, the coolant packs, the spike housing. The tungsten rod stays embedded, locked in place by material that's closed around it like a fist. I mark the position with a flag and photograph the site from multiple angles. Mallory, I say, we're regrouping. We'll come back with better equipment. She doesn't respond immediately. Then, okay. Just one word, but it carries weight. She knows what regrouping means. She knows how much oxygen she has left. We load the crawler and drive back. Alec maintains steady speed while I monitor Mallory's telemetry on my helmet display. Her heart rate has settled into a slow, rhythmic pattern, 70 beats per minute, steady as a clock. Caldwell, I say, look at her respiratory rhythm. Silence while she analyzes. That's not autonomic regulation. The pattern's too regular. Something's compressing her chest at fixed intervals. Her suit has a torso flow regulator. If something's pressing against it, it could drive ventilation mechanically, like external ventilation. She might be unconscious and the structure is keeping her alive. I watch the numbers update every 3 seconds. Heart rate, 70. Oxygen, 60%. Temperature, 34 Celsius and falling. We dock at the base. I cycle through the airlock, still wearing my suit, and head straight to the command module. Parks and Caldwell are already reviewing the helmet footage. 4 hours of oxygen remaining, Caldwell says without preamble. We need a drilling rig to create an access point from above. We don't have a drilling rig, Parks says. Then we make one. Modify the coring equipment, add power, and risk punching through into whatever cavity she's in, assuming there is one. I pull off my helmet. We drill blind, we might rupture her suit. Parks spreads his hands on the table. So, what do you propose? I don't have an answer. Ben enters, still in his suit. I mapped the site perimeter while you were working. We've got a problem. He pulls up exterior camera footage on the display, time-stamped from 30 minutes ago. The site has changed. 2 new structures have appeared. One sits 20 meters from our equipment cache. The other blocks the direct route between base and the rover's usual parking position. Both structures present features I haven't seen before. The one near the equipment cache has a recessed panel at waist height, exactly where Alec rests his hand when he's checking the crawler's chassis. I've watched him do it a dozen times, always the same spot. The structure blocking the rover path is worse. It has a depression at chest height, shaped like the rim of a standard EVA helmet. Circular, 32 centimeters in diameter, with an inner lip that would catch on the helmet ring if someone backed into it. They're copying us, Ben says. Caldwell zooms in on the helmet-shaped depression. That's not construction. That's mimicry. Park stands. We fortify the base perimeter. No more EVAs until orbital support arrives. That's 36 hours minimum. Mallory has 4 hours, I say. Then she's already... Park stops himself. We can't risk 5 lives for one person who might already be dead. Her telemetry says she's alive. Her telemetry says something is mechanically ventilating her. That's not the same thing. I look at Caldwell. She meets my eyes and says nothing. She knows the math. She also knows I'm not walking away. I need 8 hours, I say. One more attempt with different tools. If I can't reach her by then, we evacuate. Parks starts to object, but Caldwell cuts in. Give him the time. If the structures are responding to our presence, evacuating now just means we leave questions unanswered. Parks sits. He looks old suddenly. This expedition was supposed to be straightforward site documentation. Now it's hostage rescue in a place that shouldn't exist. 8 hours, he says. But you work from the rover. No one goes back to that site on foot. I nod and head to the prep alcove. Ben follows. You have a plan? He asks. I'm working on it. What I have is the memory of black gel flowing toward heat, of material that seals when cut and yields when frozen. What I have is the knowledge that every tool I use teaches this place something new about resistance. What I don't have is a way to save Mallory without making everything worse. I checked the pitons I drove this morning. The measurements I took before we left. 4.2 centimeters, 4.1. The photographs show them at 3.8 and 3.7. The structure is smoothing over contact points, erasing evidence of our presence, learning what we touch, and then growing around it. I close my eyes and see Mallory's boot prints leading into solid material. I see the depression shaped like her backpack imager, the collar shaped like a helmet ring. The city isn't trapping us, it's measuring us. And everything we do to break free just teaches it how to hold tighter. I spend 2 hours going through equipment inventory, looking for tools that haven't touched the structures yet. Everything we've used, saws, spikes, pitons, pry bars, has already taught the city something about resistance. I need a different approach. Parks appears in the workshop doorway. Your 8 hours started 90 minutes ago. I don't look up from the supply manifest. I'm aware. What are you planning? Controlled tests, small scale. I need to understand how it responds before I go back for her. He's quiet for a moment. You realize if this fails, we're evacuating with or without you. Yes. He leaves. I pull 3 items from storage, a warmed foil pack from our meal supplies, a spare EVA glove from the emergency locker, and a boot from the damaged equipment bin. Simple objects, known thermal signatures. I'll place them near structures and observe the response. Caldwell finds me loading them into a sample case. You're baiting it. I'm testing parameters. You're teaching it what we're made of. It already knows. It has Mallory. I seal the case. I need to understand the mechanism before I make another attempt. She hands me her slate. This is the gel analysis from yesterday. The material has some properties I can't explain. Look at the molecular structure. The imaging shows chains of metallic compounds interlocked in patterns that shouldn't maintain cohesion at room temperature. The bonds flex without breaking, adaptive at the molecular level. It reorganizes under stress, she says. When you heated it, the structure changed to distribute thermal load. When you applied pressure, it compressed and held the new configuration. It's like memory metal, but organic. Memory metal snaps back to original shape. This doesn't. No, it learns the new shape. She takes the slate back. Every interaction permanently alters its base configuration. You cut it, it learns cutting. You heat it, it learns heat. You press against it, it learns pressure points. I finish. Which means every test I run gives it more information. Yes. I pick up the sample case. Then I better make each test count. Ben suits up with me this time. Alec drives while I review the test protocol. 3 placements at different distances. 1 foil pack at 3 meters from a structure. The spare glove at 2 meters. The boot at 1 meter. All monitored from the crawler. No direct contact with structures. If the city responds, we observe and withdraw. We reach the site 50 minutes after leaving base. The sun is higher now, shadows shortening, surface temperature climbing into triple digits Celsius. The structures stand unchanged except for the 2 new ones, still present, still offering their copied features. Mallory's telemetry streams to my helmet display. Oxygen at 54%, heart rate 70, steady as before. Temperature 33 Celsius. Caldwell, I say. Any change in her status? Negative. The compression pattern on her torso flow regulator is driving ventilation mechanically, while her suit maintains pressure at about 1/3 of an atmosphere. That's survivable but not comfortable. I unload the sample case and position the first test object, the warmed foil pack, fresh from our heating unit, initially around 40 Celsius. I place it on regolith 3 meters from an untouched structure and retreat to the crawler. Ben says, activating the external cameras. We wait. 5 minutes. 10. The foil pack sits on the surface, heat radiating invisibly into vacuum, visible only on thermal imaging as a bright spot against the cooler background. At 12 minutes, the structure changes. A lip extends from the wall face nearest the pack, a horizontal protrusion growing outward at the level of the pack's placement. The growth is slow enough to track with the naked eye, material accumulating layer by layer, like sediment depositing from invisible water. The lip reaches 15 centimeters beyond the wall face, 20 centimeters, 30. At 40 centimeters extension, a crack opens underneath the lip. Black gel flows from the crack, moving down the structure's face and onto the regolith. It doesn't spread randomly. The gel follows the slight downward grade toward the foil pack, advancing in a narrow stream. It's going for the heat source, Ben says. The gel reaches the pack and pools around it. Then the lip retracts, pulling backward toward the wall. The gel moves with it, drawing the foil pack along like something caught in a current. The crack closes around pack and gel together, sealing them inside the structure. The whole process takes 3 minutes. Did that just... Ben starts. It absorbed an object by detecting heat and building a temporary capture mechanism. I photograph the wall where the lip retracted. The surface is smooth now. No evidence of the protrusion except a slight bulge where the foil pack presumably sits inside. I move to the second test. The spare glove goes on the ground 2 meters from a different structure. This one I press flat against the regolith before withdrawing. The weight is shorter this time. 6 minutes. The wall develops a bulge at ground level, directly opposite the glove's position. The bulge rises upward, taking shape, a palm-sized protrusion that mirrors the glove's outline. Not exact, but recognizable. The structure holds the shape for 30 seconds, then retracts. The wall smooths over. "It made an impression," Ben says, "like pressing into clay. It's measuring contact points, recording the shape." I retrieve the glove. The surface under it is slightly compressed, the regolith packed tighter than surrounding material. When I lift the glove, fine dust clings to the palm, where skin oils from previous use created adhesion points. Test 3. I take the boot and press it firmly against a structure's base for 60 seconds, then withdraw. The response is immediate. The wall extrudes a shallow pattern matching the boot's tread, not raised, but recessed. A negative impression. The structure holds it for 40 seconds, then flows smooth again. I kneel and examine the impression while it's still present. Every detail is there. The hexagonal tread pattern, the wear marks on the heel, even the small crack in the composite sole from months of use. Perfect reproduction at microscopic scale. "Caldwell," I say. "Are you seeing this?" "Confirmed. It's creating negative space based on pressure mapping." I stand and back away from the structure. My hands are steady on the camera, but there's a weight building in my chest. The specific sensation of understanding something you wish you didn't. "It's not hostile," I say. "It's not even curious. It's measuring." Ben walks a slow circle around the test site. Measuring what? Everything that touches it. The foil pack had heat and mass. The glove had shape and texture. The boot had pressure distribution. Each time we make contact, it records parameters and builds a response. To what purpose? I don't know. But I'm starting to form hypotheses I don't want to voice yet. We load the equipment and drive to a position 50 meters from Mallory's structure. I've been avoiding looking at it directly, but now I force myself to assess it properly. The structure hasn't changed externally. Same dimensions, same smooth faces, but there's a rectangular depression at chest height that wasn't present in any original survey. The shape matches Mallory's backpack imager, height, width, and the slight forward cant from how she wears it. The city measured her when she backed against something that wasn't there yet. It recorded her position, her equipment profile, her pressure points. Then it built itself around those measurements. "Caldwell," I say, "run analysis on Mallory's suit telemetry. I need to see accelerometer data from her boots and chest ring." 30 seconds of silence while she compiles the data. Then, "Grunt, there's a pattern. Regular impacts transmitted through her boot sensors. 3 strikes, pause, 3 strikes, pause, repeating every 40 seconds. How long has this been happening?" "Since you withdrew from the breach attempt. 2 hours ago. 3 strikes. Pause. 3 strikes. That's deliberate communication." "She's conscious," I say. "She's hitting something." Ben moves closer. "Hitting what?" "The wall, the floor, whatever's around her." I switch to Mallory's direct channel. "Mallory, if you can hear me, stop hitting. Save your strength." The impacts continue for another 40-second cycle. Then they stop. I watch the telemetry. Her heart rate ticks up to 80. She heard me. "Mallory, 2 strikes for yes, 1 strike for no. Can you move your arms?" 40 seconds later, 2 impacts. "Are you in pain?" 1 impact. "Can you see anything?" 1 impact. "Is there room around you?" Empty space. Pause, then 2 impacts. Hesitant. "She's in a cavity, but it's small, confined. The structure is holding her upright, driving ventilation by compressing her torso while her suit maintains pressure, and keeping her alive in a space just large enough for her body." "Oxygen at 51%, Caldwell says. 3 hours, 40 minutes remaining. I need a plan that doesn't involve teaching the city more about cutting tools or thermal breaches. Every time I attacked the wall, it adapted. The crack sealed faster. The material hardened against heat. Another direct assault will just trigger more sophisticated resistance. Ben, help me think through this." The city grows toward heat. It creates impressions from pressure. What does that tell us about its operating principles? He's quiet, scanning the site. It's reactive, not proactive. Right. So if we want to open a path to Mallory, we need to make the structure want to open itself. How do you convince architecture to cooperate? By giving it the right input. I pull up thermal imaging on my slate, studying the temperature distribution across the site. The structures maintain their baseline cool temperature, but the areas I attacked with the thermal spike show lingering heat signatures. It responded to heat by sealing. What if we go the opposite direction? Make it cold enough that the material contracts instead of seals. You tried coolant packs. They slowed the sealing but didn't stop it. Because I used them defensively, trying to freeze damage in place. What if we use cold offensively? Create a thermal differential so sharp that the structure has to respond by opening gaps to equalize. Ben considers this. You'd need sustained cooling over a wide area. Our coolant supply won't last 15 minutes at that scale. He's right. We don't have enough chemical coolant. But we have something else. Shadow, I say. We use reflective film to create an artificial shadow zone. Bounce sunlight away from a section of wall, drop the surface temperature by 60 degrees, and maintain it until the material contracts enough to create access points. That's assuming cold causes contraction. It's assuming the city operates on thermodynamic principles. If it doesn't, we're out of ideas anyway. I outline the plan to Parks over the radio. He's silent for 30 seconds, long enough that I think the signal might have dropped. Then, how long to set up? 90 minutes for the cooling perimeter, another 30 to see if it works. That leaves 90 minutes of oxygen in reserve, no margin for complications. I know. Do it. But Grant, if this fails, you extract yourself. Understood? Understood. We drive back to base for supplies. The workshop has rolls of reflective film designed for thermal management on equipment, thin polymer sheets with vapor-deposited aluminum coating. I pull every roll we have in the workshop, 12 rolls total. Ben grabs support poles, anchors, and toolkits for field assembly. Caldwell meets us in the prep alcove. I analyze the impact patterns in more detail. Mallory's conscious for roughly 2-minute windows every 15 minutes. The rest of the time her telemetry suggests unconsciousness. Why the cycling? I think the compression on her torso flow regulator is restricted enough to limit oxygen delivery to her brain. She's hypoxic, conscious when her body fights the restriction, unconscious when it conserves energy. Can she survive another 3 hours of that? Caldwell doesn't answer immediately. Physically, yes. Psychologically, I don't know. Intermittent consciousness in confined darkness is a form of torture. I think about Tran. 3 years ago, the splice he made wrong, the current that stopped his heart, his widow's annual messages asking if I sleep well. I've lost people before. I wrote the report. I told the truth. The truth didn't bring Tran back. This time I have 3 hours to make a different choice. We return to the site with full equipment. Alec positions the crawler as close as he dares, 30 meters from Mallory's structure, and helps us unload. The reflective film comes in rolls 1 meter wide. We'll need to position it to create maximum shadow coverage over the structure's south face, where Mallory's beacon reads strongest. Ben and I work quickly, driving anchors into regolith and stringing support poles. The film attaches to the poles with clips, creating a vertical barrier that will reflect sunlight away from the target wall. In vacuum, we can't rely on atmospheric diffusion to spread shadow. It's pure geometry. Block the sun, create sharp-edged darkness. 40 minutes to construct the frame, another 20 to mount and tension the film. When we finish, an artificial shadow falls across Mallory's structure, 8 meters wide and 4 meters tall. The thermal imaging shows immediate effect, surface temperature dropping from 112 Celsius to 97, 86, 74. Temperature decline stable, I report, maintaining shadow coverage. We retreat to the crawler and watch. The structure sits in manufactured darkness, heat radiating away into vacuum, with no atmospheric insulation to slow the process. Surface temperature continues falling. At 42 Celsius, roughly 30 degrees below the structure's baseline temperature when we arrived, something changes. A hairline crack appears at the base of the shadowed wall. Not from damage, from contraction. The material is pulling away from itself as thermal stress creates gaps in the previously seamless surface. "It's working," Ben says. More cracks propagate upward, following internal stress lines in the structure's composition. They branch like rivers on a map, each one releasing stored tension. Black gel begins oozing from the largest cracks, slow, viscous, responding to internal pressure differentials. I approach the structure on foot, moving carefully. The cracks are wide enough to see inside now, those same banded ribs and channels, but visible in cross-section. One crack runs vertically past the point where Mallory's beacon reads closest to surface. I peer into the crack. It's 7 centimeters wide, expanding slowly as the structure continues cooling. Beyond the outer layer, I can see bands of material, then channels, then clarity. A transparent membrane stretched over a cavity deeper inside. Mallory stands behind the membrane, upright, her helmet visible through the material. The membrane pulses against her torso flow regulator, compressing and releasing. Mechanical ventilation. The structure is breathing for her suit. Her eyes are closed, unconscious during this cycle. "Caldwell, I have visual. She's in a cavity approximately 1 meter deep. There's a membrane assisting her ventilation. I'm going to breach it." "Negative," Parks cuts in. "Breaching could cause pressure loss. She's got 90 minutes of oxygen. We're out of time for debate." I don't wait for approval. I work the pry bar into the crack, applying leverage to widen the gap. The material resists less than before. Cold has made it brittle. The crack opens to 12 centimeters, 15, 20. I can reach through now. I extend my arm into the gap, feeling along the membrane. It's tough, elastic, similar texture to the thick plastic sheeting we use for emergency hull patches. My gloved fingers find the edge where membrane meets structure. The membrane pulses against my hand. The rhythm falters for 1 beat, then resumes. The structure knows I'm here. I pull a utility blade from my tool belt. No choice now. I cut. The membrane tears. Pressure equalizes with a shudder I feel through the pry bar. Mallory's suit pressure drops. 20% loss in 3 seconds before her emergency systems compensate. Her eyes open. She sees me through the gap. I widen the tear, creating an opening large enough to reach her harness ring. Ben moves in beside me with a second pry bar, working another crack point to expand our access. Mallory tries to step forward. I can't move my legs. I aim my helmet light down through the gap. Her legs are fixed in place from mid-shin downward. The structure has grown around her boots, incorporating them. The material isn't binding her, it's fused with her. I can see where her composite shin guards transition gradually into something that looks like compressed regolith. The boundary seamless. "Ben, I need the thermal spike, now." He retrieves it from the crawler while I assess the fusion points. Both legs, identical incorporation depth. The structure took her boots and integrated them, growing upward into her suit's lower components. There's no clean extraction, not without cutting through her. Ben hands me the spike. I activate it and bring it to bear on Mallory's left leg, where composite meets stone. The heat drives into the fusion point, softening material that shouldn't soften. Behind me, the shadowed wall groans, thermal stress fighting against the heat I'm introducing. "This is going to hurt," I tell Mallory. "Do it." I cut. The spike blade isn't designed for this. It's a heating element, not a surgical tool. But there's no alternative. I work slowly, melting through the fusion zone while trying not to burn through her suit's inner layers. Mallory's breathing accelerates in my helmet speaker. She doesn't scream, just breathes, The left leg comes free below mid-shin. Composite ends in a rough edge where I burned through, and beyond that, nothing. Her lower leg is gone, converted into the structure's material. The separation edge shows both materials at once, suit composite on one side, lunar stone on the other, with a transition zone between them, where molecular structure gradually shifted from human-made to whatever the city makes of things. I move to the right leg, same process. Mallory's breathing is shallow now, rapid, shock setting in. "Stay with me," I say. "I'm here." I complete the second cut, both legs free. Ben reaches through the widened gap and grabs her harness ring while I take her weight. We pull her through the opening between us, careful not to snag her suit on sharp edges. Behind us, the structure shudders again. The cracks begin sealing, cold or not, the damage is triggering a response. The gap we're using starts to close. "Move," Ben says. We haul Mallory clear of the structure as the opening contracts. The crawler is 15 meters away. We cover the distance in low-gravity bounds, Mallory between us, her severed legs leaving no trail because there's nothing left below her shins to leave prints with. Alec has the crawler's rear hatch open. We load Mallory inside and I climb in after her, pulling emergency medical supplies from the storage locker. Her suit's lower sections are compromised, breach alarm screaming, pressure dropping despite her emergency system's best efforts. I patch what I can with sealant tape and quick foam, covering the rough edges where her legs terminate. The foam expands and hardens, creating temporary pressure seals. "Drive," I tell Alec. The crawler accelerates. Mallory lies on the floor, conscious but drifting. Her suit's reserves kicked in when I breached the membrane. "You got me out," she says. "Yes." "What did it cost?" I look at where her legs end. Composite shin guards transitioning into nothing, the lowest portions of her suit converted into material that belongs to the city. "We'll deal with it at base. Medical's prepped." She closes her eyes. "Thank you." We reach base 17 minutes later. Parks and Caldwell have the medical module ready. We carry Mallory through the airlock and lay her on the examination table. Her suit comes off in pieces. We cut through compromised sections rather than trying to remove them properly. Her legs end mid-calf. The separation isn't surgical. There's no bleeding, no exposed bone. The tissue simply stops, replaced by a calcified material that looks like lunar regolith compressed to stone. The edges aren't burned or torn. They're transitioned. Caldwell works quickly, assessing circulation, nerve response, shock indicators. Mallory remains conscious, watching the ceiling with unfocused eyes. "I was standing in the dark," she says. "Something was pressing against my chest. I could feel walls, but there weren't any walls, just pressure. And it was warm." "Don't talk," Caldwell says. "Save your energy." I kept hitting the wall. 3 times, then rest. 3 times, then rest. "I thought you'd hear me." "We did. That's how we knew you were conscious." She turns her head toward me. "What happened to my legs?" I tell her the truth. The structure incorporated them, grew around your boots and converted the material. I had to cut you free. She processes this. "Am I going to die?" "No, you're stable. We'll get you to proper medical care." She nods slightly, then closes her eyes again. Caldwell administers sedation through an access line, overriding the emergency systems. Mallory's breathing slows and deepens as the medication takes effect. Parks gestures me to the command module. Ben and Alec are already there, reviewing exterior camera feeds from the rescue. "The structure sealed itself after you withdrew," Parks says. "Complete closure. No evidence of the breach." He's right. The video shows the cracks contracting, the openings closing, the wall returning to smooth uniformity. Even the cooling effect from our shadow barrier reversed once we left. Surface temperature climbing back to baseline within 20 minutes. "It repaired damage," Ben says. "No," I say. "It learned from damage. Next time someone tries the same approach, it'll resist differently." Parks pulls up site-wide thermal imaging. "We have a larger problem. Look at this." The display shows the entire structure cluster. Two new blocks appeared while we were conducting the rescue. One positioned directly between the base and our primary rover path. The other near the reflective film barrier we abandoned. The first new structure presents a recessed opening at chest height. The recess is 60 centimeters wide, exact dimensions of the access gap I cut through Mallory's wall. Same depth, same angle, same edge profile. The city watched me cut her free. It measured the opening I made. Now it's offering the same opening back. A perfect invitation for anyone who tries the same rescue technique again. Every tool we use, every method we try, it records and adapts. Caldwell enters with her slate. Mallory's stable, sedated. Her vital signs are strong despite the trauma. She pauses. Grant, what did you teach it? I look at the structure on the display, at the opening shaped exactly like my rescue cut. How to invite people inside. Park stands. We evacuate, now. Pack essential data and personnel. The ascent vehicle arrives in 36 hours. We're leaving this site before it gets worse. No one argues. Not even me. We spend the next 4 hours preparing for evacuation. Critical data gets backed up, equipment gets secured, Mallory gets stabilized for transport. I work through the checklist mechanically, signing off on each item while my mind stays at the site, thinking about structures that measure and learn. As the long lunar afternoon drags on, the sun inches toward the basin rim. Shadows lengthen and temperatures begin to fall. Our base is heated and insulated, but I watch the exterior temperature readings anyway, watching numbers fall. At hour 6, I check the exterior cameras one final time before sleep. The site has changed again. A new structure sits at the absolute closest point to our base, 20 meters from the nearest habitat module. It's larger than the others, 10 meters long, 4 meters wide, 6 meters tall. And it presents features I haven't seen before. At ground level, there are recessed impressions matching our boot treads. 6 different patterns. The team's boots, catalogued and displayed. At waist height, a horizontal ledge with hand-sized depressions, spaced at intervals that match where we'd naturally grip for balance. At head height, a circular opening, 32 centimeters in diameter, internal lip visible even in low light. The exact dimensions of a standard EVA helmet ring. The city has learned to make a collar, something that could catch a helmet if someone backed against it, something that could hold a person by the head while the wall behind them grew closed. I photograph the structure and file the image in my incident report. Then I write a brief analysis. The structures demonstrate adaptive learning based on physical interaction. Each contact point, tools, pressure, heat, human movement, is recorded and incorporated into subsequent growth patterns. Recommend extreme caution in future approaches. The site is actively measuring human activity and building response mechanisms. I don't write what I'm thinking. That we taught it how to grip us, piece by piece. Every time we tried to understand it or fight it. That Mallory's rescue succeeded but made everything that comes after more dangerous. I seal the report and send it to Parks for review. Then I go to check on Mallory one more time before attempting sleep. She's unconscious, breathing steadily in the medical module's recovery unit. Her legs end just below the knee now. Caldwell had to trim the calcified material to clean, stable edges. But she's alive. Morning briefing happens in near silence. Parks projects the exterior camera feeds on the display. The new structure with its helmet collar, the boot impressions, the grip points positioned at exactly the heights we'd use them. Nobody speaks for 30 seconds. Ben breaks the quiet. We can't just leave this here. We're evacuating in 32 hours, Parks says. That's not negotiable. I'm not arguing against evacuation. I'm saying we can't leave it like this. Ready to grab the next team that comes here. Caldwell leans forward. What are you proposing? We don't have ordnance to destroy it. We don't need to destroy it. I pull up thermal data from yesterday's rescue. We managed to slow its response by manipulating temperature. What if we can put it into dormancy? Make it cold enough that growth stops or at least slows to geological timescale. Parks looks at the data. You controlled a 3-meter section for 20 minutes. The site spans 200 meters. We use what we have. Build a cold perimeter around the most active growth areas. Reduce thermal signatures from our equipment. Pull back heat sources that might trigger expansion. Give the next team breathing room to study it properly. That's containment theatre, Park says. You're buying hours, maybe days. Days is better than nothing. Caldwell checks her slate. We have 19 rolls of reflective film left in storage. That's enough for a perimeter ring, roughly 40 meters in diameter if we position it strategically. Do it, Park says. But this doesn't delay evacuation. The ascent vehicle launches on schedule, whether you're finished or not. I spend the next hour calculating optimal positioning for the cold ring. The structures grow toward heat sources, so the ring needs to shadow the central cluster, the original blocks plus the newest ones that demonstrate learned features. I plot the sun's arc across the local sky, calculating angles that will maximize shadow duration. Ben helps me load supplies while Alec preps the crawler. 19 rolls of film, 40 support poles, anchoring hardware, and every temperature sensor we can spare. The work will take most of the day. Mallory is awake when I check on her. Caldwell has her propped upright in the medical bay, running circulation tests on what remains of her legs. How are you feeling? I ask. Like I lost the argument with a building. She looks at where her legs end, wrapped in clean dressings. Caldwell says I'll need prosthetics. Full reconstruction from mid-calf down. That's correct. Will I walk again? On Earth gravity? Probably not like before. On Mars or Luna, yes. Prosthetics work better in reduced gravity. I move to check her suit diagnostics. Habit. Then remember she's not wearing one. You'll adapt. People do. You sound certain. I've seen it happen. I haven't, but she needs to hear confidence right now, not my doubts. She shifts position, wincing. Grant, what did you see when you cut me out? What was around me? I describe it. The membrane maintaining pressure. The cavity sized exactly for her body. The material that had incorporated her boots. It wasn't trying to hurt you. It was holding you in place like a tool holds a component. That's worse somehow. If it wanted to hurt me, at least that's comprehensible. She looks at her hands. It just measured me. Kept me stable. Like I was an object it needed to store. That's our working theory. What happens to the next person who touches those structures? That's what I'm trying to prevent. I leave her to rest and suit up for the coldest work we've attempted. The plan requires systematic placement of reflective barriers across the site's active growth zone, creating an artificial twilight that will drop surface temperatures below the city's apparent comfort range. We reach the site 2 hours after sunrise. Surface temperature is already climbing, 90 Celsius and rising. The structures stand unchanged from last night, but I don't trust that stability. Every hour we spend here is another hour for the city to observe and adapt. Ben and I work in parallel, driving anchors into regolith at 10-meter intervals around the site's perimeter. Alec ferries supplies from the crawler, maintaining safe distance. The anchors go deep, 30 centimeters minimum, to ensure the support poles won't shift when we tension the film. 3 hours to place all 40 anchors. My suit's cooling system struggles against the sun's direct heat. Sweat collects in my undersuit, held against my skin by the garment's compression until my next break inside the crawler. We mount the support poles next, connecting them to anchors with locking clamps. The poles extend 3 meters above ground level, tall enough to create shadows that will cover the structure's upper surfaces. In Earth's atmosphere, this would be simple construction work. In vacuum, with bulky gloves and limited leverage, every connection takes 3 times longer than it should. 5 hours into the work, Caldwell's voice cuts through the radio. Grant, I'm seeing thermal activity at the site, eastern quadrant. I look toward the eastern structures. One of them is developing a protrusion at ground level. a horizontal shelf extending outward. The growth is slow but visible, maybe 2 centimeters per minute. What triggered it? I ask. Unknown. You're not near that section. I check the equipment cache. It's positioned 30 meters from the eastern structures, within the city's apparent detection range. The cache contains backup power cells, all radiating waste heat from their charging cycles. It's responding to the power cells, I say. Ben, help me move the cache farther out. We haul the equipment 40 meters southeast, increasing distance from active structures. The protrusion stops growing at 15 centimeters extension, then holds that position. It's testing range, Ben says, seeing how far it can reach toward heat sources. We resume construction, working faster now. The reflective film comes next. Meter-wide sheets clipped to the support poles and tensioned to create vertical barriers. Each sheet catches sunlight and throws it back, redirecting thermal radiation away from the shadowed ground. 8 hours after starting, we complete the cold ring. A perimeter of reflective barriers surrounds the central structure cluster, creating a zone of artificial shadow 40 meters in diameter. Thermal imaging shows immediate effect. Surface temperature inside the ring drops from 106 Celsius to 92, then 87, then 73. We retreat to the crawler and monitor. The structures sit in manufactured twilight, their surfaces cooling toward equilibrium with the shadowed regolith. At 68 Celsius, roughly 20 degrees below their baseline, the first response appears. Cracks form at the base of 3 structures simultaneously. The material is pulling inward as temperature drops, creating gaps in the previously seamless construction. Caldwell, are you seeing this? I ask. Confirmed. The cold ring is forcing thermal stress throughout the affected structures. The cracks propagate but don't widen beyond hairline fractures. The structures are responding to cold by contracting slightly while maintaining structural integrity. Over the next hour, surface temperature inside the ring stabilizes at 64 Celsius. The structures hold their contracted state. No new growth appears. No protrusions extend toward our equipment. It's working, Ben says. The cold is suppressing growth response. I watch the temperature readouts. For now, but look at the boundary. At the edge of the shadowed zone, where reflective barriers end and direct sunlight resumes, several structures show subtle changes. Small protrusions developing at ground level, all oriented toward the equipment cache we moved. The city is learning to differentiate between our active work and passive heat sources. It's growing toward the cache while avoiding the shadowed area. It knows the ring is hostile to growth, I say. It's routing around it. Caldwell's voice. How long until it breaches the perimeter? I estimate growth rates based on the eastern structure's earlier response. 12 hours if it maintains current pace. Less if it accelerates. The ascent vehicle arrives in 26 hours. Then we have 14 hours of buffer, enough time to evacuate if the ring fails early. We place the last temperature sensors, passive monitors that will record thermal data after we're gone, transmitting to the relay mast for eventual pickup by follow-up missions. Then we stage equipment in a careful pattern, disabled tools radiating residual heat, positioned at the ring's outer boundary, creating a thermal gradient that should, theoretically, lure growth outward rather than toward the base. It's full dark by the time we finish. It's not true lunar night. The basin rim finally occludes the low sun here, dropping the site into shadow. Lunar night transforms the site into absolute black, except for the crawler's work lights and the reflective ring's faint gleam under Earthlight. The structures sit in shadow, dormant or patient. I can't tell which. We drive back to base. I'm exhausted. 8 hours in a suit, most of it heavy construction work in 1/6 gravity that still taxes muscles in unfamiliar ways. My shoulders ache from managing tool momentum. My hands are stiff from gripping through heavy gloves. Parks meets us in the airlock. The cold ring is transmitting data. Caldwell's analyzing thermal patterns now. I strip out of the suit and head straight for the command module. Caldwell has the site displayed on the main screen, thermal overlay showing the temperature differential between shadowed structures and the surrounding plane. The ring is holding, she says. No growth inside the perimeter for the last 3 hours, but there's activity at the boundary. 7 structures developing extensions oriented toward the equipment you staged as decoys. Expected behavior. We're teaching it to grow away from the base. You're also teaching it that heat equals safety, Park says. What happens when the next team arrives with warm equipment and pressurized habitats? They'll have warning. Our data will show exactly how the city responds to thermal signatures. I pull up my incident report file. I'm recommending 300-meter standoff distance for future operations and strict limits on heat-generating equipment. Parks reads over my shoulder. You're not mentioning the helmet collar or the boot impressions. Those are in the photographic documentation, but not in your threat assessment summary. I save the file. The summary focuses on containment protocols. The photos speak for themselves. Grant. Parks sits across from me. What aren't you saying? I look at the thermal display, at the cold ring holding the city at bay. Every time we touched those structures, we taught them something new about human contact. The collar exists because Mallory was trapped. The boot impressions exist because we walked there. The grip points exist because we braced ourselves for balance. If I write a report that emphasizes how quickly the city learns, Earth will send a larger team with heavier tools to study it, and that team will teach it even more. So you're planning to understate the threat. I'm planning to recommend measured approach, slow study, minimal contact. I close the report. The city isn't hostile, it's adaptive. If we approach it carefully, we learn. If we approach it aggressively, we create something more dangerous than what we found. Parks is quiet for a while. That's not your decision to make. I'm incident officer. Threat assessment is literally my job. And you're letting personal guilt about Mallory influence your assessment. Mallory is alive because I made the right call. The city learned from her rescue, yes, but I won't apologize for bringing her home. I'm not asking you to apologize. I'm asking you to be honest in your report. I pull up the document again and stare at the blinking cursor. Honest. That's what I was 3 years ago when I wrote Tran's accident report. Completely honest about every mistake he made, every protocol he violated, every decision that led to his death. The truth destroyed his family's memory of him and left his widow asking if I sleep well. This time, the truth is, we taught a lunar ruin how to grip people by the head. We demonstrated every tool we used to break through barriers. We showed it our thermal signatures, our pressure points, our standard equipment profiles. The city is now a more sophisticated trap than when we arrived. If I write that honestly, Earth will respond with demolition equipment or weapons-grade solutions. They'll try to destroy it, and in the process they'll scatter adaptive material across the mare or teach it even more dangerous resistance methods. I'll be accurate, I tell Parks. Every fact will be verifiable, but my recommendations will emphasize caution. That's a compromise you can live with? It's the compromise that gives the next team a chance to do this right. He doesn't argue further. We both know the report goes out under my name regardless. I work on the document for another hour, crafting language that presents facts without sensationalizing them. The structures demonstrate adaptive response to physical contact. The material exhibits memory properties at molecular scale. Containment via thermal management shows promising results. Recommend standoff distance and limited interaction for future study. All true, all verifiable, all considerably less alarming than, we built it a collar. I send the draft to Parks and Caldwell for review. Then I check on Mallory one more time. She's awake, reading something on her slate. She looks up when I enter. Caldwell showed me the cold ring footage. You've been busy. Trying to leave the site safer than we found it. Did it work? We bought time, that's all. I sit on the medical bay's spare chair. How's the pain? Manageable. Caldwell has me on enough medication that I'm mostly just numb. She sets down the slate. Grant, I don't blame you for what happened. I know you're probably thinking about how to word the report so it doesn't sound like you made a mistake. But you didn't. You saved my life. You lost your legs. I was going to lose a lot more if you hadn't cut me free. She looks at where her legs end beneath the sheet. This isn't your fault. It's the cost of being first. Someone had to touch those structures to learn what they do. It happened to be me. I made the choice to use heat and pressure. I taught it those methods. And if you hadn't, I'd be dead. Stop trying to carry this alone. I don't know how to respond to that, so I just nod. She picks up her slate again. I've been writing my own report. For the record, I want it clear that I made the decision to approach that structure independently. My mapping route put me there. Not your orders. Mallory. I'm serious. You're going to get blamed because you're incident officer. I'm making sure there's another account that shows you did everything right. Even if that's not quite accurate. She meets my eyes. It's accurate enough. We all made choices out there. Mine just had worse consequences. I thank her and leave before the conversation can circle back to guilt distribution. We're both trying to protect each other from blame, which means neither of us believes the official story will be kind. I return to my bunk and try to sleep. Can't. My mind keeps replaying the rescue. The membrane tearing, Mallory's legs fused into stone, the structure sealing behind us as we withdrew. Every detail sharp and immediate despite my exhaustion. At some point I must drift off because I wake to Park shaking my shoulder. Grant, we have a problem. I follow him to the command module. Ben and Caldwell are already there, watching the exterior camera feeds. On screen, the site, the cold ring, and something new. 3 structures have appeared outside the ring's perimeter overnight, all positioned closer to the base than anything that existed yesterday. The nearest one sits 18 meters from our primary habitat module. The closest structure shows boot impressions at ground level, grip points at waist height, and, at the top, a recessed opening. Not the helmet collar, something different. This opening is rectangular, roughly 40 centimeters by 60 centimeters. The dimensions of an equipment locker or a torso. When did these appear? I ask. Sometime during lunar night, Caldwell says. The exterior cameras have timestamps showing clear ground at 2200 hours. These structures are present at 0300. 5 hours. 5 hours to grow 3 structures while we slept. I zoom in on the nearest one. The rectangular opening isn't random. The depth and proportion match the profile of a suited human's chest and shoulders. If someone stood with their back against that opening, it would accommodate them perfectly. It's building people-shaped receptacles, Ben says. That's not measuring anymore. That's preparation. Parks pulls up the site map. These 3 structures form a line between the base and the rover path. They're blocking our easiest exit route. I trace the positions. He's right. The structures are positioned to intercept anyone walking from the habitat modules to where we usually park the crawler. Not exactly blocking, there's still room to navigate between them, but definitely marking the path. Could be coincidence, I say without conviction. 3 structures in perfect geometric relation to our traffic pattern. Caldwell shakes her head. It's responding to our movement routes, marking choke points. I check the cold ring telemetry, still functioning. Surface temperature inside the perimeter holding at 62 Celsius. The original structures remain contracted, inactive, but the city has simply grown new structures outside the containment zone. The ring worked exactly as intended, I say. It suppressed growth inside the perimeter, but it didn't suppress growth. It just redirected it. Then we failed, Park says. No, we demonstrated that thermal management works as a control mechanism. The next team can use that data. I pull up the incident report again. I'm adding a section on growth patterns during containment. The city routes around obstacles while avoiding hostile conditions. You're writing documentation for something that just learned to cut us off from our own equipment. I'm writing documentation that might save the next team from making our mistakes. I save the updated report. We evacuate as planned. The cold ring stays in place. The relay mast stays live, transmitting data. Earth gets a complete picture of what happens here. And if the city continues growing toward the base, then the follow-up team will have clear evidence of response patterns and can plan accordingly. Caldwell looks at the screen. Grant, that opening. The body-shaped one. That's not random adaptation. That's specifically designed to hold a person. You taught it that. When you cut Mallory free, you showed it the profile of a human body in a suit. Now it's building receptacles sized exactly for that profile. She waits, but I don't add anything. What is there to say? She's right. Every rescue technique I used is now part of the city's architectural vocabulary. The heat, the pressure, the cutting pattern, all of it recorded and available for replication. Parks breaks the silence. We begin evacuation prep immediately. Critical equipment gets loaded first. Mallory goes up in the first ascent slot. The rest of us follow in order of role priority. We spend the day packing. Essential data storage first. Every sensor reading, every photograph, every helmet camera recording from 3 weeks of work. Then personal items, toolkits, samples. Mallory's ruined suit gets bagged for analysis, particularly the shin guards, where composite material transitions into whatever the city makes of things. I work methodically, checking items off lists because that's what keeps chaos from overwhelming logistics. Load this, secure that. Verify weight distribution for lunar launch. Don't think about the structures growing outside. 16 hours before ascent, I take one final EVA to check the cold ring. Ben comes with me. We drive the crawler slowly, navigating between the 3 new structures that mark the path. Up close, the body-shaped opening is even more unsettling. The depth suggests a cavity behind the opening, room enough to accommodate a full adult torso. The edges are smooth, almost polished, inviting. Don't touch it, I tell Ben. I wasn't planning to. We reach the cold ring perimeter. The reflective barriers still stand, gleaming under the risen sun. Inside the ring, the original structures remain contracted and inactive. Outside the ring, growth continues. 7 structures now show extensions reaching toward our staged equipment decoys. The containment is working exactly as designed, I say. It's buying time. How much time? Depends on how fast the city learns to ignore thermal barriers. We place final sensors, download data from existing monitors, and photograph the site from multiple angles for the record. Then we withdraw, navigating the maze of structures that have appeared since we arrived. On the drive back, Ben says, "You're not telling them everything. I'm telling them what they need to make good decisions." That's not the same as truth. Truth without context is just data. I'm providing context. He doesn't push further. We both know what we're doing, drawing a line between accuracy and honesty, betting that restraint now will prevent worse outcomes later. Back at base, final prep continues. Mallory is loaded into the medical transport module, her vitals monitored remotely as the ascent vehicle's first stage completes its automated flight checks. Parks reviews launch sequences while Caldwell backs up medical data to 3 separate storage systems. I write the final version of my incident report. Every fact accurate, every observation documented, every recommendation backed by evidence, and every threat assessment carefully calibrated to encourage caution without triggering panic. I'm betting Earth will respond with careful study instead of aggressive demolition. I'm betting the next team will read between the lines and understand what I'm not saying directly. I'm betting my judgment about what gets emphasized is better than the judgment of people who've never stood on this plane. I could be wrong. The city could kill someone because I didn't scream loud enough about the danger. That weight settles on me alongside all the other weights I carry. But Mallory is alive. The cold ring is holding. We're leaving this place with more knowledge than we arrived with, and that knowledge cost less than it might have. I sign the report and submit it for final review. Parks and Caldwell both co-sign without major changes. The document goes up the chain. 20 seconds after transmission, we receive acknowledgement. The report is in the system. Whatever happens next is out of my hands. I check on Mallory one final time before evacuation. She's conscious, secured in the transport module, ready for the first ascent window. "Thank you," she says, "for getting me out. Thank you for trusting me when it mattered. Will you visit? After we're back? When I'm relearning how to walk? If you want me to, I do. Someone needs to remind me it was worth it." The ascent vehicle arrives on schedule. Mallory goes up first, along with critical data storage. The rest of us follow in sequence over the next 12 hours. One slot per orbit as the vehicle makes multiple trips from surface to orbital station. I'm last off the moon by my own choice. Incident officer stays until everyone else is safe. From the ascent vehicle's tiny porthole during final ascent, I watch the site shrink below. The base modules, the cold ring, a silver perimeter barely visible from this altitude. And the structures clustered at the center, patient and still, holding every lesson we taught them. The last thing I see before the moon curves away beneath us is a faint gleam near the cold ring's edge. Another new structure, growing while we launch. Reaching toward the base we're abandoning, equipped with openings and impressions, and all the architectural vocabulary of human contact. We leave it there, waiting. And I carry the knowledge that I chose what to say and what to leave silent. 3 years ago, I told the complete truth and destroyed a family's memory of their son. This time, I told a careful truth and left gaps for interpretation.